Hello everyone, this is Dr. Vikrant. Today we'll be discussing about prognosis in COVID-19. How can we assess the prognosis in patients with COVID-19? It can be done with the help of laboratory findings such as blood investigations using inflammatory markers or with the help of radiological findings such as chest CT. But both these findings will give us only the cross-sectional picture. We cannot assess who are the patients that are going to deteriorate or who are the patients that are going to stay safe with only mild disease. So I came up with my own prognostication method using three parameters of history, the chronology of the illness, as well as vitals examination, which includes oxygen saturation and pulse rate. Traditionally, the severity is classified as mild, moderate, severe, with mild disease having only URTI features, having oxygen saturation greater than 94, and no rise in inflammatory markers. Moderate disease having oxygen saturation between 90 to 94, mild involvement in chest x-rays or inflammatory markers in the borderline, and severe disease when the oxygen saturation is less than 90%, having severe elevation in the inflammatory markers, and severe CT severity score on chest radiology. But the similar disadvantages also apply to this classification because the mild, moderate, severe classification is not static. The patient can deteriorate from mild to moderate and from moderate to severe. So who are the patients those are going to deteriorate, and who are the patients that we should keep an eye on for early hospital admission or early mechanical ventilation or early initiation of steroids? To understand this, first we have to understand three clinical progressions in patients with COVID-19. The detailed discussion about these three clinical scenarios is done in my previous video named Immunity in COVID-19. I'll be commenting about the video link in the comment section below. You can go through it if you are interested. I'll just summarize these three clinical progression in this video. The first one is represented in blue color. Patient will be having mild URI symptoms of either sore throat, fever, myalgia only for a period of 1 to 2 days, and they will spontaneously recover within the first week, and they will be asymptomatic by the end of second week. So these patients represent about 80% of the population. Now the second group is patients having symptoms for a period of 1 to 2 days initially. They will be having fever, sore throat, myalgias for a period of 2 to 3 days, after which they will spontaneously recover and remain asymptomatic for a period of 3 to 4 days. At around day 7 of the illness, there will be resurgence of the symptoms in the form of more severe myalgias, more severe fever, which is not responding to paracetamol. They might be having shortness of breath or difficulty in breathing, and they may require oxygen support or even mechanical ventilation. Though majority of the patients will spontaneously recover, some patients may require oxygen supplementation, very rarely mechanical ventilation. They represent about 15 to 20% of the population. Now the third group here is represented in red color. They'll continuously worsen from the day 1 of the illness. The symptoms will worsen from day 3, 4, and from day 7 the worsening will accelerate. They require more ventilation support, more oxygen supplementation. Most of these patients require ICU admission, and their prognosis is bad in comparison to the other two clinical scenarios. They represent about less than 5% of the population, and this population will be having multiple comorbids or elderly population. As we can see here, mild disease in week 1 may progress to moderate or severe disease in week 2. So if the patient is having moderate disease in week 1 or mild disease in week 1, he cannot be said to be safe. Similarly, patient having moderate disease at the peak of the illness in the week 1 might be having mild disease in week 2. So these variables of mild, moderate, severe are dynamic and cannot be fully relied upon to assess the prognosis of the patient. So what are the two access parameters while we should ask about the patient while assessing for COVID-19? The first thing is time from the onset of symptoms. Here, important thing to note is we should ask specifically about symptoms 1 week before the onset of current symptoms, because the patient might be presenting to us in the second peak, and the first peak might be so inconspicuous that patient may forget to mention to you. In that case, we have to specifically probe for this history whether he is having any similar complaint in the preceding 10 days or 1 week prior to the current illness, because the prognosis will drastically differ in these two patients. If the patient is having the second peak which is mild, then we can safely treat him from home. On the other hand, if the patient is having mild disease in week 1, he had to be kept under more duration of follow-up, for example 10 days. If the patient is having second peak, he can be followed up just for a period of 4 to 5 days. Essentially, we are halving the time of follow-up for these patients by eliciting a single history. The second advantages of this is a few patients were discharged from the hospital because they recovered after the first week, and after the discharge from the hospital they went home and they deteriorated in the second week because of the cytokine release syndrome, and they ended up either with lung infiltrates or even mechanically ventilated in the second week, because this history was not elicited and the patients were discharged. So it is important to assess symptoms 1 week prior to the onset of current symptoms. Another important thing to assess is contact history. This is very, very important. I cannot emphasize enough on this. If the patients are sharing indoor environment either with their family or friends, we have to ask whether the contacts are having similar complaints in the family member. For example, if a family of 4, out of which 3 developed symptoms 7 days prior, and the 4th person developed symptoms only 7 days after, it is very unlikely to occur, because in the indoor environment they will have similar contact history and similar exposure history. A lag period of 2 to 3 days is accepted, but 7 days lag period between development of symptoms is unlikely to occur in common indoor environment. So if the patient present with 7 days gap between his family members and himself, most probably the patient might be having the second peak. And similarly, exposure to a known COVID patient should also be assessed. Take a median incubation period of 5 days, and based on that we can assess whether the patient is having first peak or second peak. Equipped with this information, we have to classify the patient into either of these 6 categories. The thing we confuse most is the second group, that is having one peak in the first week and second peak in the second week. We have to accurately classify these patients either in the first peak or the second peak, because the prognosis will differ. Based on this, we can classify into 3 groups, that is 6 groups, that is patients having mild disease in week 1 or moderate disease in week 1 or severe disease in week 1, or mild disease in week 2, moderate disease in week 2, or severe disease in week 2. Based on these 6, we can classify the severity. The worst prognosis of the 6th group is patients having severe disease in week 1. I've seen many of my patients who have rapidly deteriorated in week 1 of the illness, and majority of the patient required mechanical ventilation, and they had multi-organ dysfunction, and they responded poorly either with steroid therapy or remdesivir. This group of the patient represents the worst prognosis of all the 6 groups. Now the second worst prognosis is seen in moderate disease in week 1 or severe disease in week 2. They have similar outcomes, but they do fairly better in comparison with severe disease in week 1. They may require mechanical ventilation support and treatment with steroid therapy or remdesivir, but about 30 to 40% will deteriorate, and majority of this population will improve with supportive care and mechanical ventilation. Third worst group is mild disease in, actually this is not the worst group. Second best group is mild disease in week 1 or moderate disease in week 2. They do fairly better in comparison with the second group, that is moderate in week 1, severe in week 2, and they require only oxygen support, and they do very much better in comparison with the severe in week 1. And the best prognosis is seen in patients having mild disease in week 2. Almost none of my patients whom I have seen having mild disease in week 2 required any hospitalization or oxygen support. In fact, if the patient presents to me with mild disease in week 2, I don't even investigate with inflammatory markers or even a CT chest. I just treat them conservatively, not even getting a single blood investigation done to them, because that's how much confident I am in using this prognostication chart. Once again, I'll repeat it. Severe in week 1 represent worst prognosis. Next worst prognosis is seen in moderate week 1 or severe in week 2. Second best prognosis is seen in mild week 1 or moderate in week 2. And the best prognosis without any doubt is mild disease in week 2. These are my personal observations, and I haven't collaborated with any studies, because there is no information that the studies were done using this method of prognostication. But with a fair certainty, I can tell that for all of my patients, this prognostication method did wonderfully. Thanks for watching.